Hey beer geeks, and welcome to a very unusual homebrewing episode of the Craft Beer channel. Unusual because although I'm brewing a very tasty sounding Mosaic and Sabro New England Pale, it's not really about the recipe or the process, it's more about what this beer represents. Because today, in this episode, I'm going to be talking to Brienne. Now if you didn't know who Brienne is, she used to work for Notch, one of our favourite lager breweries. And at the beginning of last year, she sent out a message on her Instagram stories after having a sexist comment made about her while she was installing a new brew house for Notch. She just asked, does anybody else get this? Is anybody sick of these sexist comments within the beer industry? And the response she got was absolutely horrendous. She received over 1,000 stories of sexist abuse, of sexual harassment, of sexual assault, and then it cascaded out into stories of transphobia and of racism. And we realised that this industry that we're all in, or that we all enjoy purchasing from or being a little bit of a part of, is not this wonderful, reassuring, welcoming space that we claimed or just assumed craft beer would be. It completely destroyed that myth. All of the stories that she collated and republished on her Instagram account are still there, so you can still read it, and I super recommend that you do, just to get a sense of the incredible scale of the horrific behaviour that's going on in the craft beer industry and is still going on. And I'm happy to report that the work that Brienne has done and the other people that have joined her in this campaign has started to make a difference. But there's so much more that we can do, and that is where our brew today comes in. So today I'm going to be brewing Brave Noise, which is a beer that Brienne brewed at Notch to kind of help raise awareness for this campaign that she pretty much accidentally started. Now, the idea behind the Brave Noise campaign is that breweries will make the beer, donate the profits to some of the charities that Brave Noise suggest, and also all over their breweries, their tap rooms and online, publish their code of conduct that explains to customers how they're going to make people more welcome, how they're going to increase the diversity of their spaces, and how they're going to ensure that everybody is safe within those spaces. There's also a homebrew element to this, and anybody at home, and this is still open for you all to have a go at, you can brew it just to raise awareness, get people tasting Brave Noise, get people talking about the issues within the craft beer industry so that we can start to make a difference. Now, before we get stuck into today's video, I've been a YouTuber long enough to know that there are probably already people wading into the comments right now saying that this is virtue signaling, that this is attention seeking, probably saying that, they've never witnessed this, which is complete nonsense, and that's part of the issue. But I understand it. I understand why you think that, why you might feel that way. Because a year and a half ago, although we've tried to do as much as we can to increase diversity in beer, I was not aware of how bad these issues were. So please, if you're one of those people about to start typing, if you're one of those people quietly thinking it, just please open your ears, listen to what Brienne has to say, read the stories that are on her Instagram and other Instagram accounts as well. All the links will be down below, and see how we can make a difference, because craft beer needs more diverse voices. It needs more diverse customers. From a commercial point of view, it needs it. That's how we're going to find more growth and continue to expand this wonderful industry that we're thinking we're building. But equally, we also need it to ensure that this is a wonderful industry, to ensure that we're not just creating a little bubble of rich white people enjoying something, and we're opening it up and making sure that everybody that wants to can enjoy this and feels welcome to enjoy this space. And we, in particular at the Craft Beer channel, are going to be making lots of steps towards ensuring this, which we'll get into towards the end as we announce our new editorial code that will inform how all of our videos are made. So that's my little lecture over with. We're going to do some home brewing, we're going to talk through this recipe, and then we're going to be talking to Brienne mid-brew. Good morning, homebrewers. The time has come to get brewing. It's pretty early in the day because I've got to try and time this so that I get my interview timing right with Brienne. My sparge is going, my mash liquor is just coming up to temperature, and I've got my recipe all laid out. This recipe starts with a bunch of Bohemian Pilsner malt. It's a beautiful, beautiful malt that you'd use in Bohemian Pilsners, but also it's going to give plenty of malt depth, but also a really bright, light colour to this New England beer. On top of that, we're putting in some oat flakes to get lots of body, lots of protein, lots of head retention, and wheat malt, which will also help with that, but still provide plenty more sugar to get us to our original gravity. And then some caramel, which is going to add a little bit of golden colour to it, a little bit more malt depth, a little bit of sweetness to it. Hop-wise, we're going to be playing around with Sabro, which, I mean, this hop is still so new, it's got its experimental hop number on it. So that's going to give us some coconut and some stone fruit vibes. And then we've got Mosaic. We all know what Mosaic gives you. It gives you juicy fruit chewing gum kind of stuff when it's at its best. Maybe a hint of dankness, maybe a hint of sweatiness, sort of gym sock kind of thing. Let's see how this is going to pan out. I don't think we'll extract that level of flavour in this beer. It's only about 4.5%. The dry hop is pretty small, and there's just a small Whirlpool edition as well, because it's kind of meant to be a session beer, a really approachable beer that everybody can enjoy. So that's the recipe. We've got London Ale 3, classic New England yeast going in. It's going to give us more of that stone fruit, peach kind of thing going on. And I've done some water chemistry to bring up that body, lots of calcium chloride, just to make it feel thick with 3 C's, as nobody should say. So for the first time in my life as a homebrewer, I'm running ahead of schedule, but I cannot wait to be summer brewing because it is super steamy in here. I don't know if it's coming out on camera. But since I'm running ahead time, I thought I'd continue the great tradition of Craft Beer Channel hop sniffing. I'm particularly keen to get my face in some Sabro because I've never brewed with it. I don't think I've ever sniffed just Sabro as hops. It's only ever been in beers that I've tried. So I'm going to give these a go and then weigh them out. So there's a little look at them, these nice little pellets. These are actually pretty different to most hops. So most hops are humulus and lupulus, you've probably heard that before, but this is a variation Neo-Mexicanus, and these are sort of wild hops that were grown in mountains in Mexico and have been crossbred to create these new varieties with completely different profiles. So that's why Talus has coconut, cedarwood, all kinds of unusual flavours in there. And this one, yeah, I mean, wow. Really coconutty. That's absolutely bonkers. So that's coming from these green pellets here. Just can't kind of believe that something like that is producing that kind of aroma. Yeah, it smells like pina colada in this bag. It really does. Okay, so we are now transferring the beer after our hop stand. The whole place smells of coconut, and because we're transferring, it means a couple of things. One, I can shut the bloody door because it's freezing. Two, I can crack this yeast very soon and get that pitch. So this is London Ale 3, which is, you know, kind of used as a New England yeast, and that's going to give us some stone fruit, still that lovely body that we're looking for, along with the water additions, the level of hopping, the oats, the wheat that I'll put in there to make sure I get that kind of body. And the other thing I can crack is a beer. Right, so once this is done transferring, I'll be dumping the yeast, and then I will be chatting to Brienne. So Brienne, thank you so much for taking the time to speak to me. You'll be pleased to know that the brew day's done, so I'm not going to be rushing off to make a hop edition.
I can't wait. I wish I could come over and check it out. It looks great behind you.
Thank you, yeah. I mean, it's raining so hard at the moment that I'm a bit worried that we're going to find some leaks in what I built. But,
is it 15 gallons or?
This is 5 gallon, the 5 gallon batch that the original recipe put out. Did you come up with the recipe?
Yeah, I did. We had just hired a new brewer, Julie, and we really needed, it was right when the pandemic restrictions lifted and we realized we didn't have any beer. So we were just like cranking out beer as fast as we could. And we needed to fill a line with a pale ale. And Julie and I just kind of saw what hops we had in there, threw together a recipe, and then we named it Brave Noise, and which happened maybe 2 weeks after all of the stories started flooding in. And so we were like, let's just pay homage to everybody and all the survivors and victims that have been coming out. And so many people were asking for the recipe and wanted to make it. It was like a no-brainer to just make it a global collab. I mean, so many people were wondering, especially homebrewers. So I'm glad we got all the recipes together and could formulate that for everyone.
Right, so it was kind of an organic start to everything. It wasn't intentionally a campaign. It was people came to you and said, "Can we do this?"
Yeah, it was total happenstance. Just came out of nowhere, but I'm glad it did. I mean, it's a good beer. I love it. All the different versions that I've had pretty much taste exactly the same. So
I think that's like, the Sabro, isn't it? You're never gonna.
I know. I've never used Sabro before, and it's funny reading everyone's descriptions. They're like, "Yeah, it's an IPA that tastes like coconuts." I was like, "Oh, that sounds terrible." I don't get coconut out of it, but that's just me.
So yeah, like the beer was kind of organic and came out of nowhere, and I guess so was exactly what happened when you posted that first Instagram story. Can you tell me a little bit about sort of the origins of that whole movement?
So when it all started back in May, it was kind of when, back to the COVID restriction situation, everything was just lifting and we could finally get down to Brighton, which is part of Boston, and we were building our new brew house and tap room. And I'd totally forgotten, like, the past 5 years, I've been talking about this a lot at different Pink Boots meetings and Master Brewers meetings, and just really trying to make these stories public. And we did a lot of work in Massachusetts and New England, but it didn't really go further than that. So when I started asking these questions, no one around here was surprised. They were like, "Oh, here we go again." And so that's why I think I got so many messages at first from people that I knew. And they were all pretty, not tame, but they were just like, "Oh, someone whistled at me," or like, "Oh, you can't pick up a keg." And then all of a sudden it just escalated out of control to sexual assault and just clumps of stories all about one assaulter. And so it just became super serious. And the reason I even asked the question that day, since I'd been quarantining for the last year and a half, I kind of forgot that sexism was a thing, because I was just in my house and nobody was telling me that I couldn't do anything because of my gender. And so the first day I leave the house to build this brew house, and there were some people on the construction site just being ding dongs and saying what have you. And I just got so pissed off, and I was like, I have to post something about this, because I was just getting so fucking angry about it. And yeah, it totally blew up. Crazy.
See, I mean, you said that you've been asking these questions, and you were maybe, I think we're all aware of the everyday sexism that happens in beer, generally in the world. But were you really surprised by the very serious nature of some of the accusations, given that beer represents itself as sort of quite a safe space? That's how it's marketed itself, as the better people.
No, I was more surprised that people were actually coming forward to talk about it. We knew that this was happening, but I was also surprised when people that I knew and my friends were being named, and that was a huge eye-opening experience. But we all knew that this was going on. And luckily, a bunch of different people around the world have kind of started their own sections of carrying on what I started, Erin in Canada, and then there's Siobhan in the UK, and Fanny in Denmark, and there's some women down in New Zealand and Australia. And so it's great that people are kind of moving it to different regions and making sure that it doesn't lose steam, and trying to get their actual community to pay attention, even if there hadn't been stories on my Instagram about Australia or whatever. And so it's nice that people, aren't letting this go, and they really want to keep it going. And so it's absolutely insane the amount of stories that are still coming out. I'm glad that it's still gaining traction. We were worried it would like fizzle out super quick. Yeah, and it kind of took on different categories, which was really exciting to watch. In the beginning, when all of a sudden it wasn't just women coming out saying like they got sexism or sexually assaulted or any of that, there were men coming out too, and then clumps of people like just talking about a bad actor kind of abusing like an entire organization. And so I feel like that was like probably the heaviest hitter out of all of them, was when it was a concentrated like 50 some odd employees all talking about, you know, one company abusing them. And so it's good seeing these different categories get concentrated and kind of force people to listen to them. So I'm like super proud of everyone that's been facilitating that.
And when it started, I guess you didn't really have a plan because you weren't expecting it to sort of snowball. But, you know, once you were, you know, deep into like, you know, 24/7 resharing these stories, and I remember you like having to take breaks, just saying to people, I'm not going to publish for a bit because my life has to go on for a moment. Like, what was ultimately your aim once it started snowballing? What you were hoping to achieve?
Let's see. I mean, in the beginning, the second people or companies started coming out with public statements saying like, we stand with her, and now, you know, we're immediately going to put together this code of conduct. I mean, that was really all it was, is just making sure people were aware and standing up for others when they saw it happening. I think I identified a lot with the stories that would say, like, oh, I'm the only female at a brewery and like all my male coworkers are making these jokes about me, or just inappropriate jokes in general. It makes me uncomfortable. And they would say like other coworkers would watch the women be uncomfortable and not do anything about it, or like see them getting harassed and not doing anything about it. So my specific concern was to get people just aware that it was happening and give people the confidence to stop that, or tell people to like shut the fuck up, you know? And that was my biggest concern. But once it started, you know, really getting out of control, that's why we created Brave Noise, so that we could create resources depending on what the situation was that anyone was dealing with. They could be able to go to the Brave Noise page, check out all these different companies, organizations that can help, and just find answers and kind of next steps of what to do about it. Yeah, so we've actually been working with the app. It's called #NotMe. In regards to the Me Too movement, we're trying to make it so, obviously, not me, I'm not assaulted. I don't know. But so we're working with this app, and it's a free reporting app for anyone to use. You can just go on, and it's actually pretty cute, which is a weird way to describe a sexual assault reporting app. But you go in, and it's like they designed it specifically for people in breweries. And you could say like where it happened, how it made you feel, who it was. You can decide if you're anonymous or not. And then you can decide, do you want to send it to the company? And then they make sure the company handles it. So it's kind of like a third-party HR system. But they also have this great, they created another platform specifically for the companies. So if a company can't afford an HR person, they can subscribe to Not Me, and for like a monthly fee, they literally just have Not Me as their new HR. And it's really great for companies to just sign up for that situation, because it really shows your employees that like you care, and you're not just relying on them like to get this app. You're literally being like, hey, we're standing by, and like we have this for you, we want you to use it, instead of being afraid that people are going to use it against you. You know what I mean?
And it's so everybody lots of people who watch this will be in the industry, but those who are just drinkers who enjoy going to breweries and tap rooms and such, is there something that they can do other than knowing, say, about that kind of platform or looking for the code of conduct? Can they, you know, they should be going, I guess, up to breweries and saying, what's your code of conduct, and asking to see what is in place there and putting pressure on them that way? Is that the best way drinkers can help?
Ash has a really good answer to this. Her favorite thing, she loves that consumers hold all the power, right? And so you get to decide what beer you're buying. And so, yeah, I think every consumer has the right to ask a company to see their code of conduct or their value statement and then make a decision. I mean, if you don't buy someone's product, then they can't be a business. So I think it's totally valid for the consumer to be requesting stuff like that, especially this day and age. Everyone, especially, so I think the reason the t-shirts like kind of skyrocketed off is because people love showing what they believe in, and they love shouting it, and they like people to see. And if you believe in the anti-sexism, anti-racist, pro-equality beer club, you want everyone to know about it. So I would want everything that I buy, I want to make sure that that company has the same values as I do. So I do go out of my way and make sure that, I'm only buying stuff from people that care about, the world and humanity and human rights. So yeah, I think it's valid for customers to ask for something like that.
So it's almost been, this whole idea of craft beer being a better business, more ethical business has actually stood in the way because we've done so much on trust, and we haven't had those systems in place for when, that trust is entirely breached or just thrown out the fucking door.
Right. Well, the craft beer community's goals for the last 20 years have been, let's destroy macro beer. It hasn't been, let's take care of, the community that's actually involved in making that beer or drinking it, to be frank. And I think we finally realized this past year where our priorities actually stand. It's not about craft beer being like this booming business that's better than macro and punching out the big guys. It's literally like, how do we make our industry an example for other small businesses to act and treat each other.
Okay, so we'll reflect on that conversation with Brienne in a moment, but a couple of weeks have passed and the beer that I brewed that day, my Brave Noise beer, my Mosaic and Sabro New England Pale, is ready, and it certainly looks the damn part. I'm really happy with that colour, that level of haze. There's a nice head on that. This was poured a good couple of minutes ago and it's hanging on really nicely, and the aroma, lovely lemon sherbet and coconut cream. And then loads of juicy fruit chewing gum from that Mosaic, potentially the yeast as well, which of course has some stone fruit esters. Body-wise, it's great. I wouldn't do anything to how dry it is or to the water profile of it. I think I got that bang on from what I learned in our Verdant Brew Day. It's just a beautiful, beautiful beer. And the fact that it's, mine came out, I think, 4.3. It's got so much body, so much mouthfeel, so much flavour to it, and yet it finishes nice and dry. So this is actually a recipe I'm going to keep forever. If I did it again, I'd probably just reduce that Sabro just a touch and amp up the Mosaic a little bit, just because the Sabro is all over that aroma and you lose a little bit of the stone fruit. But otherwise, I mean, that is straight into my repertoire of great sort of pales that I just brew for events and for friends. It's so, so good. And I think we could convert some people to Sabro. And so we come to that conversation with Brienne. I mean, my jaw metaphorically hit the floor so many times, and I'm not sure I really conveyed it in the video we just did because I was trying to, be a professional, but good Lord, some of the stuff she said really blew me away. I mean, the first one was that she wasn't surprised by the scale of it. How bad must things be before we actually realised what was going on? 15,000 stories, and if you'd asked me whether craft beer was sexist 18 months ago, I'd have said no. I think it's got a problem with attracting women into the beer industry, but in terms of once they're in, I think they're well treated, and that was fucking nonsense, wasn't it? The other thing that really blew me away as well was the fact that Brienne said that what surprised her, rather than the scale of it, was the fact that some of her friends were being implicated as, the wrongdoers. And I think that might explain why I thought that everything was okay, because it's such a hidden issue. And I think there's been so much whitewashing by, saying we need to support independents and small businesses without really understanding what that means. We say small and independent, and what we probably think we mean is ethical. That's definitely not the case. It's been completely whitewashed. It's like, they can't be bad people. They own a small business, which logically, when you really think about it, makes zero sense whatsoever. So I learned a huge amount from that, and there was lots that couldn't go into this video that we carried on talking about ways that Craft Beer Channel can help. And off the back of that, I've written, along with Brad, an editorial code of conduct. So stuff that we've learned from conversations with Brienne and lots of other people in the industry about how we can use our platform to do a better job of making people feel safe and welcome, and indeed just getting the word out to people. So we've put that together. There's a link to that down below. You can give that a read. And now Brad and I, over a beer, are going to explain what the thinking was, why we wanted to do it, why it's so important, over another beer. Cheers. So now we know the homebrew was a success. Hopefully this video's been a success for you as well. I said at the start of this video, I really hope that if you're skeptical about this kind of thing, maybe we can win you over. Maybe Brienne can talk you around and explain to you the incredible and horrific situation that we're actually in. Over 15,000 stories of sexual assault, sexual harassment, and prejudice in the beer industry. Something we thought was a nice place. And clearly, good people don't drink beer, just people drink beer. Exactly. So massive thanks to Brienne for all the work that she's done for that, and also Ash, who's been doing Brave Noise with her. And so that we're not just not part of the problem, but also part of the solution, we've now published a code of conduct. So it's not quite a code of conduct like all the breweries have to do. We've done an editorial code of conduct. So it's a list of, I guess, philosophies of approaches that we're going to take to make sure that our content is as welcoming, as open, as accessible as possible, because we need to make sure not just the tap rooms and the breweries and the festivals are accessible, but the people telling you about those, which is us.
Exactly. We're all about trying to get on board this message and making beer a safe place for everybody. As a channel, we've always tried to tell these different stories, different points of view, but certainly going forward, after the Brave Noise campaign, it's going to be front and foremost in everything we do, everything we put out there. So we've already made some videos in this vein, and if you'd like to watch those, check out the links at the end of this video.